Welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. And in today's video, we will be discussing is playoff Joel Embiid a generational choker? Which, in my opinion, he really is, because the stats say he's mainly a regular season player. And the evidence that I have will point to my reasoning on that. The first piece of evidence we have to discuss is the best team he's beaten in the playoffs was the 2022 fifth-seeded Raptors, led by Siakam and Fred VanVleet. And even then, it took them 6 games to beat that team, and he only averaged 26.2 points, 11.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, but had 20 TOs in that series alone. And that year, the Raptors only had a defensive rating of 120 in the playoffs. I know that stat line is a really good stat line, but a defensive team like the Raptors that wasn't that good, and it took you 6 games to beat it, is not that good. But the second piece of evidence is he only averaged 22 points per game on 49.2% true shooting in 9 elimination games, which is crazy to look at when he's usually the number one scorer on the team during the playoffs, because most of the years until he's gotten help like Jimmy Butler or James Harden or even Tyrese Maxey, he's been the number one option, which if you're the number one option, you should be averaging better shooting and more points per game, especially in elimination games when you're the number one option. But the third piece is, in no playoff run has he averaged more assists than turnovers, which is sad because during the regular season he averages a whopping 3-point assists to 3.4 turnovers, which is nothing to brag about when you get to the playoffs and only average 2.8 assists per game and 3.6 turnovers per game in your whole playoff career, which, like I said, is nothing to be proud of, especially when you have very good scorers around you, like the names that I mentioned before, such as Jimmy Butler, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey. Even you can put the names such as Tobias Harris or Al Horford in those topics. But it's just you're not passing well. You're doing more turnovers than passing, which everyone says defense wins championships. But the fourth piece is that he is literally the only MVP in history to never make the conference finals, which, let's not forget, he beat out Jokic this year, who ended up winning the finals. And let's not forget to also talk about the fact the 2 teams he played were the Brooklyn Nets, who had a defensive rating of 115.6 in the playoffs, and were an easy sweep for them, which, in my opinion, the Nets were not ready to make the playoffs this year, but they squeaked by in the East, which we all know the East is weak. But the second team they played in this year's playoffs was the Celtics, which was their toughest team, and it literally took them to Game 7, and in that 7th game of that series, they were blown out, and Embiid wasn't even the series leader for that round. And to make matters worse, in that Game 7 elimination, he only scored 15 points on a 27.8 field goal percentage in a whopping 38 minutes. That's an elimination game again, and you only scored 15 points, shooting 27.8%. Dude, that's the time where you're supposed to come up and show why you're the MVP and why people should look at you as the MVP, not a choke artist. But to make matters worse, in this 5th piece of evidence, is this year he had the biggest points per game drop from the regular season to the playoffs of any MVP in history. During the regular season, he averaged 33.1 points per game in the regular season and only 23.7 points per game in the playoffs. That drop off is negative 9.4, which is the largest by that year's MVP in NBA history, which is wild. Like, how do you go from averaging 33.1 points per game in the regular season all the way down to 23.7? Like, I understand during the playoffs defense is bigger than the regular season, but you were that dominant during the regular season, and during the playoffs you kind of just like disappeared. But the sixth piece of evidence that we had, we're going to take all the way back to the 2021 playoffs versus the Hawks, where he had 8 turnovers in back-to-back eliminations games, which is horrible because, again, turnovers lead to easy buckets, and easy buckets equals easy wins. But to continue on that series, with the chance to go up 3-1, Joel Embiid went 0 for 12 in the second half versus the 5th-seeded Hawks in Game 4, which included a wide open layup for the lead.
He's 0 for 12 in the second half.
That's an easy layup, but it's kind of indicative to the second half that Joel Embiid has had right in front of the rim.
And then in that same series, in Game 5, down 3 with 15 seconds left, he missed 2 crucial free throws that ended up sealing the loss for them.
Atlanta with 2 timeouts remaining. And Embiid misses the free throw. This is unreal. A complete fourth quarter collapse by the 76ers. Embiid stuck on 37 points. He last scored at the 7:01 mark of this fourth quarter to make it a 2-point game. He missed both of them. Herter with a rebound, gets the timeout. Joel Embiid misses both free throws. Atlanta ball up 3, 10 and change left.
Then, to make matters worse, even in that same series with all the bad luck that he's had, he got stripped by Danilo Gallinari.
Away for both. Embiid got Gallinari on him. Spins, lost the handle. Gallinari got a piece. Up is Gallinari. Down it goes. A Philadelphia turnover, and the Atlanta Hawks add to their lead. Up 6 now. A defensive stand by Atlanta. Got them shaking their heads here in Philadelphia.
In Game 7. Like, how do you get stripped by him to seal the game? Which is horrible to look at. And then the 7th piece of evidence is all of his offensive stats, which, how I look at offensive stats, and everyone should, is points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, and turnovers. Field goal, 3-point, and free throw percentage are worse in the playoffs than the regular season. Aside from free throw percentage, which is the same, and that's sad when it seems like all he cares about is the regular season. It's sad that all of your offensive stats are worse in games that matter. But let's head over to the 8th piece of evidence, where he has just one playoff series win in his career, where he played in all 4 wins, which was all the way back in 2022 versus the Raptors. Which, I mean, it's kind of a touchy subject because you can't help injuries from happening. But when you have played 53 games in your career for the playoffs and only one series you were there for all 4 games, is crazy to me, because that's the time where you're supposed to be there for your team. But like I said, you can't predict injuries, and injuries happen in sports. It's just a thing. But the final piece of evidence is in 3 career Game 7s. He has an 0 for 3 record with a 49% true shooting and 5.3 turnovers per game. Also, once he got swept in a series despite averaging 15 free throws per game, which was in 2020 versus Boston, which is wild that you average 15 free throws per game not per the whole series, per game, and you still lost. But also in the last 2 regular seasons and playoffs, his box plus minus has dropped from 9.2 in the regular season all the way down to 1.0 in the playoffs. And like I said, to finish things off, the worst thing ever for him was his playoff clutch performance was during a 5-point game with 5 minutes left. He shot 9 for 38 field goal with a whopping 35.7 true shooting percentage. So those are my 8 pieces of evidence. Well, not 8, 9 pieces of evidence that Joel Embiid is the biggest playoff choker in history. But in my honest opinion, it seems like he only cares about the regular season instead of that nice, shiny gold trophy. And that leads me to saying, like I said, he's a generational playoff choker. But if you disagree with me, comment down below. But also, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Peace out, y'all.